Hi, I'm Chris, also known as Harm, and this is the second of so far 2, possibly 3. And this time we're going to talk about something a little more complicated than the last one, which is basically friction, but in the terms that we're talking about, it's wheel hardness. So in this little guy that I showed earlier, I had to actually add wheel because I'm not a very good drawer. So you'll notice that none of these overlap. So when you hear a number, you can kind of discern what it means by basically where it falls into on these scales. So we have the height, we have the width of the wheel, and now we're going to talk about hardness. And this is the widest range, and because it's friction, a lot of people kind of shy away from it because it seems more complicated. It's not really that complicated. It's not very difficult once you kind of start to get a handle on it. I mean, if you want to bring in math and you want to try to model this, which is why I have whiteboards, I've actually tried to model it a few times. It is kind of complicated, but for practical purposes, it's fairly simple. So what we're going to talk about first of all is what those ranges mean. So when you're talking about the range of wheel hardness, there are wheels that are beyond this slightly. I know that Heartless makes an 86, so God forbid I forget something, but for practical purposes, this is a good range. So they go down around to 88 and they go up to about 100, and it does, like I said, it does range a little bit past that. So what we're going to talk about first is what would happen if you did have a wheel that was past these ranges. I picked 95 as your average. It's an arbitrary number. So if we extend out from 95 and we go down, numerically we're going down. If you were to think about, a car tire that's not inflated all the way, you're talking about something down in that range, something that it's going to have a lot of friction because since it's not inflated properly, it's going to rub a lot on the road. And if you had 4 flat tires, if you ever watch Cops, you can see those cars do not go very fast because there's a lot of friction involved until they're on their rims, and then there's very little friction. But so the farther down on this you go, you get things that are very sticky. And in a sense, it's actually becoming more and more squishy. It's not as hard. So in this direction, you get softer wheels that are more sticky. And it's pretty much as simple as that. You're not going to be able to necessarily tell the difference by touching them on this range, but that is the effect that it's going to have. So if you go from 95 and you go harder, you can think of something like wooden wheels. Now, if you skate on wooden wheels anywhere, pretty much anywhere, you're going to do a lot of sliding because they have very little friction on the surface you're skating with. So you can see that in itself is fairly simple, but where it becomes difficult is there are a couple other factors. One is how you skate. If you're new and you're on both your skates all the time, if you have both your feet down going into a corner and you're wobbling a little bit, you're going to be more likely to slide out than if you were on one skate and you had your weight fully on it confidently. It sounds kind of contrary, but because of your weight being more evenly on those 4 wheels rather than kind of randomly on 8 wheels, it'll act like a stickier wheel. The other one definitely is the floor that you're skating on. The floor that you're skating on actually has a certain amount of stickiness to it. So if you're talking about something like concrete, it's on the less sticky side, so it's going to be more slippery as you go in this direction. Same with floors. So sport court is somewhere in the middle. Coated wood, right, especially right after that they do the coating, is definitely down on the sticky side. The last thing that kind of comes into play is weight. 2 skaters, similar talent, similar floors, similar wheels. One weighs 50 pounds more. They're going to be on they're going to skate differently. They're going to think that those wheels are different because those wheels are going to feel differently. So if if one person weighs 150 pounds, the other person weighs 200, you know, the person that weighs 200 pounds probably needs a harder wheel, because it's going to be, if you took a 98 and you gave it to this person that's in the middle, to this person that's 150 pounds, they're not going to push down on it as hard as the person that weighs 200 pounds. So that's going to affect where you fall on the scale too. But the two biggest ones are going to be, that you'll find, is the floor that you skate on and the kind of wheels that you pick. So the better you skate, the wider range you can skate and not have to change anything. You can just deal with it. But this is more for beginner skaters. So what I would say is, like, definitely don't rush into buying wheels until you understand why you hate the wheels you have, why they don't work for you, or hopefully you've gotten some good advice. So what I'm going to talk about now is how these two react with each other. So if I weigh what I weigh, which is around 180, if I weigh 180 and I have 95 wheels and I skate on sport court, you know, those are all, these two are averages. Like, the sport court's around in the middle of what floors I can skate on. 95s are right in the middle of what wheels I can get. If this is where I was happy and I liked these wheels while I'm skating here, it's going to change as I go to a different floor. If I get invited to go skate on a place with concrete, with polished concrete, and you know, they don't do anything to make the floor stickier, it's super slippery, right? So that's going to change what kind of wheels I'm going to want to bring there, because as I said before, the floor has its own amount of stickiness. So as the floor gets less and less sticky, my wheels are going to feel less and less sticky because it's dragging everything over. So if I go to that polished concrete floor, I'm going to want to start moving closer to the other end. I'm going to want to moving closer to the 88s. And the opposite's true when I start going to a coated wood floor. Right after they coated it, it's super sticky. If I brought my 95s there, I'd probably feel like I'm working super hard. You know, maybe it's not worth it for me to change and I'll just stick with it. But if I want my wheels to feel the same, I would have to bring maybe my 98s. And that way it kind of balances it out. So your weight will play into it, but your weight probably won't change significantly. It has to change quite a bit for you to be able to notice difference in your wheels. So once you figure out where on the scale you lie, you'll be able to kind of go at it from that point attitude. If you always skate on concrete, you're probably going to have wheels that are down here, along here somewhere. So you know, though, that the more grip you start to begin to get, the more you're going to probably want to gravitate over this way. If you switch leagues from here to here, and you know, you leave these 88s on and you're trying to skate on a super sticky floor on super sticky wheels, you're going to work really, really hard to maintain your speed. The opposite's true here. If you're on a concrete floor and you let's say you're on a league with the coated wood floor and you switch to the concrete floor. So originally you had really hard wheels and you keep those on the concrete floor, you're probably going to slide a lot and spend a lot of time on your back or front, but not on your wheels. So that's kind of how those two play together. It's actually fairly simple when you think of it in terms of, you know, one has a certain amount of grip and the other has a certain amount of grip, and you're trying to balance them and find a nice point in the middle. Another thing that will definitely get affected is your stopping ability. So as I said before, when people start out skating, everybody wants stickier wheels because they're afraid to slide. But when you start to learn how to stop really well, you'll find that a certain amount of slide is actually really helpful. So if you're skating along and you try to do a plow stop you bring your wheels out. If your wheels are super grippy and you're on a super grippy floor, those wheels are just going to fight you so hard to come back in, you might not be able to push out hard enough to keep them out. So it's helpful to be able to slide as you come to a stop, because your feet are actually going to be faced in quite a bit. And if you can't slide, if those wheels have too much too much grip, it's going to make it very difficult to stop. You can still stop, but it certainly is much easier if you have the right balance of grip. The same thing goes with hockey stops. Hockey stops, if you do them on super sticky wheels, it's very difficult. I wouldn't say it's impossible, because I'm sure there's people out there that can do it. And same goes with if you have wheels that are too slippery too. Like, if you don't have enough grip, you're never going to be able to execute anything particularly well, and you're going to feel kind of bad about what you're doing. So it's really the balance is what you're looking for. You're not looking for having a ton of grip or a ton of roll or whatever. You're trying to find whatever balance works for you in particular. And if you think of it as simple as balancing your wheels with the floor mostly, it becomes fairly easy. So in the next video, I'm going to talk about how to mix your wheels, and you could to some degree fine-tune it even more and make some things a little bit easier. I think that's all for this one now. So I'll see you in the next one.